Welcome back to the StockTA podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Steuer. Today, we're looking at a company in the high-stakes world of immuno-oncology that is trying to change how we weaponize the body's own natural killer cells. We're talking about GT Biopharma, ticker GTBP. Please note this interview is being disseminated on behalf of the company. While CAR T therapies have made headlines, GT Biopharma is pioneering a tri-specific killer engager or TriKE platform that aims to be more potent, more persistent, and crucially, an off-the-shelf solution. With fresh FDA clearance for their B7H3 targeted candidate in solid tumors and crucial data readouts coming this year, we're at a major catalyst window for the company. To walk us through the science and the strategy, I'm joined by GT Biopharma CEO Michael Breen. Michael, 2026 is shaping up to be a defining year for your company. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate you having me. 2026 is going to be most definitely an extraordinarily exciting year for our company. We already have one phase 1 trial ongoing for blood cancer, and we recently got FDA approval for our second phase 1 trial, but that trial is going to be for solid tumors. Solid tumor market is a huge market. It's estimated to be worth something of the region of $360 billion per annum worldwide. And the trial that we're going to be conducting, which hopefully will open around June time of this year, will be what's called a basket trial. So all that means is that we're going to try and hit all of the most prolific and deadly solid tumor cancers. So we're going to go after prostate cancer, which affects 1 in 7 men worldwide, breast cancer, which affects 1 in 12 women worldwide, but also some of the what I would describe as the silent assassins, things like pancreatic cancer, bladder cancer, and then some of the more prolific ones like lung cancer, head and neck cancer, and ovarian cancer. So, obviously, if we were to get even just a signal in any one of those targets and solid tumors, then it would be a seismic shift for our company and how we're viewed in the biopharma market today. So if I may, I'll just kind of go straight into it and try and give you a little bit of background in relation to the company.
Yes, please. Let our viewers know a little more about your company.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. So very unusually, the company's been around since 1965, which is unusual for a biotech company. As you can imagine, we've been through many, many different iterations over that period. We were originally an OTC company, and we uplisted onto NASDAQ in February 2021 and during that period, we were conducting a phase 1 trial for blood cancer, for AML and MDS, for what we now refer to as our first generation molecule. So in 2021, and the way it works is as you go through the different cohorts, the amount of drug that's administered to the patients increases per cohort. And the FDA are, as you'd imagine, quite reasonably very prescriptive because they want you to start at a very low dose for patients so that you don't harm patients. And then once you've established safety, the dose level starts to tick up. So in relation to the latter part of the trial in 2021, the last 3 cohorts, so treatment of 6 patients, we achieved bone marrow blast count reductions, which is essentially what you're looking for in a phase 1 blood cancer trial, of between 33 and 64%. So that was very significant, and we're extremely excited about that, and very much looking forward to moving straight into the phase 2 trial and expanding that trial and in other hospitals also with treating more patients. But then our scientists who've developed our molecule came to us and explained, and this is what we call a high-class problem to have, that they'd actually been working on it and developed the molecule further and significantly improved the molecule. So they significantly improved it with a few things. One was they'd given it the characteristics of nanobody technology, which meant that the molecule helps to bind onto the cancer cells much better. because it's smaller fragments. But also the payload that we call interleukin 15, they had significantly improved and made it what's called a camelid interleukin 15. And that just refers to the fact that it's taken some of the characteristics of the llama, alpaca, and camel mammals. And the reason that is significant is because they exist in extremely harsh environments, whether it's in mountainous terrain or deserts. So they have an incredibly robust immune systems. And the upshot of all of those improvements was that in preclinical models, we believe that the what we now refer to as a second generation molecule was somewhere between 10 and 40 times more potent. So with that information, we took an extremely difficult decision and determined it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to pivot in to go straight into the phase 2 trial for what we now refer to as the first generation molecule, and instead we're now back in the clinic with our second generation molecule, with a nanobody camelid technology and much more potent. And we're currently halfway through a trial for blood cancer with that technology. So we've treated 7 patients already, and we've already seen activation of endogenous NK cells and induced NK cell expansion. And data from multiple blood biomarker assays show heightened immune activity. So we know that we are very much on the right pathway. We've already demonstrated that the drug is safe, both in 2021 for the first generation molecule and for the 7 patients dosed thus far. But we're extremely excited, and I would just sort of pause and just explain a little bit more with regard to what our drug does and what it's about. So, for folks who are unfortunate enough currently to be diagnosed with pretty much any form of cancer, they'll be given one or more of 3 options, which will be surgery, chemotherapy, which basically is poisoning your blood, and wipes out your natural killer cell, your white blood cells, or radiation. And if you're really unlucky, you may get 2 or all 3 of those. And I'm firmly of the view that when we look back at the oncology space and how patients have been treated over the, because this technology has been around since just after the Second World War. So you're talking, 70 to 80 years where there hasn't really been huge advancements when you compare it to things like computers, the internet, mobile phone spaces, things like that. For some reason, oncology has somewhat lagged behind. But now we are very focused on using our what we call our TriKE. So it's a tri-specific or 3.3 functional molecule, to activate the body's natural killer cells. So to activate them, which basically switches them on, and then to assist with proliferation, but also to assist with persistence. Because when someone gets cancer, their body's own immune system or natural killer cells, something has gone fundamentally wrong. And what our drug does is it kind of resets and turbocharges the body's natural killer cells, which is what the body uses to kill cancers or other diseases. So, as I say, it activates it, it switches it on, it helps proliferation so that it's sufficiently numerate to overwhelm and kill the cancer, but also it gives it persistence so that it stays around long enough to keep killing the cancer and any other cancer cells that have mutated. So that's very important. And the other important thing is that this immunotherapy is it doesn't involve any barbaric or inhumane treatments, whether it's poison of the blood with chemotherapy or radiation, or surgery. And I think that's extremely important. Um, so the other thing I would highlight is that in relation to the trial that we're going to be conducting, having got FDA approval for our IND for solid tumors, um, that drug will be administered by way of subcutaneous injection. And the idea is that, folks these days, whether they're diabetics or whether they're people who are taking uh, drugs for administering themselves, drugs for reducing body weight or for losing fat. Um, and I'm sure we all know what those drugs are, but they're well used to administering the drugs themselves by giving themselves a quick injection into the body fat, and that is how our drug will be administered. And then the other thing I want to highlight, Kevin, is just to flag up the fact that our technology is a platform technology, and that is extremely important because it means that our molecule, if it works for blood cancer and if it works for solid tumors, then all we need to do is take one of the three functional parts of the molecule, which is called the target, and swap it out depending on what cancer or disease we wish to kill. So, for example, for blood cancer, the target is something called CD33. For solid tumors, the target is, as you mentioned earlier, B7H3. Estimated that approximately 90% of all solid tumors highly express B7H3. So we already know that is the correct target to go after. But also we have in our pipeline, because it's a platform technology, we have an autoimmune disease target molecule where the target is CD19. And again, a lot of companies like ours are using CD19 as a target for autoimmune disease. And the autoimmune disease market is estimated to be around 115 to 120 billion dollars per annum. So if you look at some of the transactions in the pharma industry that have been seismic, if you look at, say, the Gilead transaction, um, where they paid $12 billion for a company that had platform technology. The reason that they did that is because that they knew if that molecule worked and it was a platform technology, then you just swap out the target. And it's a much quicker process and easier process to get it through from the IND application to the FDA to ultimately getting approval from the FDA. So companies are, big pharma companies are prepared to pay significantly more for entities like ours that have platform technology. So I just wanted to flag those things up. And hopefully that gives your viewers kind of an overview of who we are and what we do.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. I don't have a background in medical, so it sounds like what you guys are trying to do is, some of the cancer treatments seem like it's kind of like a carpet bombing strategy, and it just takes out everything around the tumor. And what you
Yep.
guys are trying to do is a very like precision targeted strike without any collateral damage. Is that kind of the right idea?
That is, I couldn't have put it better myself, in all honesty. I mean, often I'll say it's kind of laser precision targeting is how we do it. Instead of just thinking, So for example, what I alluded to earlier, um, when patients get chemotherapy, it it wipes out the body's
It's a lot of
natural.
side effects.
Huge. But the greatest and worst side effect is it wipes out your own immune system to the point where your physician will say to you, stay indoors. Don't go outside. You've got no immune system. You can't come into contact with sick people or anyone that you don't even know is sick, but may be sick or have some sort of flu or other type of, whether it's COVID or whatever, because that could be potentially fatal. So having your body's own natural immune system wiped out by chemotherapy is a very, very drastic and dramatic treatment. And your carpet bombing analogy is a rather excellent one. But for us, it's minimum side effects is the key for us, but also using and harnessing the body's own immune system, the body's natural killer cells, which is, the body is an incredible thing. And the way it operates and how it deals with various things, whether it's disease or cancer or whatever. And in healthy people, it works perfectly well. It's sick people who something has happened to them where their body's natural immune system, for whatever reason, has been compromised. And what we're trying to do is take those people and their immune system and basically turbocharge it, boost it to the point where it kills the cancer or kills the autoimmune disease effectively with minimum side effects.
That's really cool. And I think that's a good way to transition. I'd like to pull up your chart and
Sure.
show kind of what's going on here. So this is our website, StockTA.com. Here's your
Yeah.
ticker symbol, GTBP. We use a an algorithm that shoots out bullish or bearish or neutral
Yeah.
scores. And
Yeah.
right now, the company's very bearish with a decent amount of overhead resistance, but you've had some long candles here and then some more recent sell-offs at the end of January. So I want to give you a
Yeah.
chance to explain to our users kind of what's going on in the background and why that could have happened.
Sure. So so the first thing I'm going to say, which is the obvious one, is that if you look at if you were to take a longer term view, and I'm not suggesting that you do, but just to try and explain what's happened in the biotech and biopharma market in 2021, the biopharma market was red hot to the point where when we launched on when we uplisted onto NASDAQ, we uplisted at a share price of $5.50 per share. Within 14 weeks, when we were conducting and getting very, very positive results, our share price went up as high intraday to $19.73 and a market cap of $550 million. Back then, we had one candidate, which is now what we refer to as our first generation molecule. Now we have a whole platform. We're already using our second generation molecule. We're about to launch a solid tumor trial, which will be very significant for the company. And we have a rich and deep platform technology. So I think part of the problem is people don't always scratch beneath the surface. I'm always amazed by the fact that people don't always do their due diligence and educate themselves on the company and where it is compared to where it's been. So the first point I'm going to make is, as I say, we're in a very, very bearish market for biotech and biopharma, unlike where we were in 2021. The second thing I'm going to say is I don't think that people know what's going on with our company. They haven't scratched beneath the surface. They haven't done due diligence. They just it's a herd mentality. And when someone sells, other people follow because they think there's something they don't know, which isn't actually the case. We've put out regular press releases with regard to the the results that we've had for the phase one trial, and they have been relatively positive. As I've explained earlier, they've demonstrated safety, but they've also already demonstrated activation of the NK cells, the NK cell expansion, and heightened immune activity, which is exactly what we expected to see. So if I were to give you one comment with regard to what's happened with the stock and why it's there, I think it is the market generally for biotech is not great. People are sort of knee-jerk either for buying or for selling, which I don't really understand because if you invest two things, if you invest in biotech, first one is it's not like you're buying gold, you know. It's a riskier investment, but it's also a longer term investment. So that is what people should be very focused on. But if you get it right in biotech, it can be incredibly lucrative. They can investment in biotech. You can see some companies where their stock price goes 50 times what it was. So I think. Look, we have some very exciting things coming down the pipe in 2026. I've never sold any of my stock. I'm not interested in selling because I have complete faith and confidence in the inventor of our science. He's a guy called Dr. Miller. He's a key opinion leader in the NK cell engager space. And everything that we've seen thus far has been very positive, and we're in a much better place than we were in 2021, and yet our stock price doesn't reflect that. So there's another way to look at it, which is that it's actually a buying opportunity, because the stock price compared to what it was in 2021, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
You answered a lot of my questions as you went through kind of your pitch, but you're going through, this phase one to phase two transition with the second generation of your TriKE molecule, if you will. Like, did I say that right?
You said it
Uh,
perfectly.
um, are you trying to prove after phase two that this works and partner with a bigger pharmaceutical company? Are you guys trying to see this through to the end? Kind of like, what's kind of the roadmap of where you think this will go in the next 6 to 12 months?
So that is really an excellent question, Kevin. That's you've hit the nail on the head. So my background is I was a mergers and acquisitions partner in a big global legal practice. Um, for me, this is about two things. One, it's about doing something truly beneficial for mankind. So I would like to see this through to the end, no question, because I want to be a more humane, less invasive um, solution for cancer and other diseases. But it would be, I would not be doing my job as the CEO if I were not constantly engaging with and looking for potential joint venture party partners or investors from the world of big pharma, because this industry is an extremely expensive industry, and the amounts of money to see through from phase one to approval from the FDA can be quite significant. And the best way to do that is to partner up with someone who's going to help out financially to achieve that. But equally, I'd say to you that, you know, big pharma are constantly looking at and talking to companies like ours, because they want to find the next kite pharma. Um, because that is what they do. They all have huge business development departments whose job is to constantly troll the market and try and find the next exciting thing. And we believe that our technology from the NK engager space, the natural killer cell engager space, we think that is the right technology for the way forward.
Nice. So you kind of answered my second part question, but I'm not familiar with this space and other spaces. I've been a part of companies that have done joint ventures or other kind of business deals. How
Yep.
how would that, from a very high level, how would something like that work? Would you do a joint venture where the bigger company would pay for kind of the process, the regulatory costs, and you still maintain, you know, access to the upside and the profit? Do you sell something and retain a royalty on it? Like, can you explain how that works for our listeners?
Sure. And by the way, that's another excellent question. Um, so there are many different options, and in these scenarios, you invariably look at all of the different options. So as you've very astutely identified, you can have a joint venture, and a joint venture can be in many different forms, but the most vanilla joint venture would be that they say, look, as you identified, we're going to bear the cost of taking this through the trials. So we're going to, whether it's we'll put in 25 million today and then another 25 million when you hit a certain milestone. Um, you can do it that way, and you can say, okay, well, then we will have a profit share depending on A, the amount of the investment, and B, how the joint venture is structured and how much risk reward big pharma are prepared to take. But invariably, what they'll seek to do is to as all companies like to do, they try to de-risk it. So they will put in place along the pathway to approve FDA approval stipulated, clearly defined milestones. And as we hit those and achieve those milestones, then they will put more money in, and but possibly that their profit share will increase. But they may then, as we go through that process and achieve those milestones, they may then pay us significant sums of money along the way. So that would be one potential joint venture route. There are others. And then again, as you astutely identified, you also have the licensing route. So we could say, they could come along and say, look, we think this, you've got a pipeline technology. You've got 6 candidates currently. You're in the clinic for 2. We'd like to take 2, we'd like to license 2 of the candidates that are not currently in the clinic. And we will pay you, 100, $200 million. Or they could say, we will take the 2 candidates that you've currently got in the clinic. And, I've seen deals done where companies have been paid 300 million. And I'm talking about actually, ironically, something that's preclinical, not actually gone into the clinic, $300 million. And then there's like a back end royalty. And then there's again, you've got the milestone
Yep.
process. And then there's back end royalties on top of the 300 million. So I I'm pretty much agnostic with regard to um, the
Structure of the deal.
structure of the deal. What I want to do is make sure that we get to the point where we actually get this approved. And I know that it's expensive, and I know that it's astute to enlist and have the assistance and a partner who's going to help to shoulder the expense along the way. But we firmly believe in our technology, and as I say, the inventor of our science is a gentleman called Dr. Jeff Miller, and he is a key opinion leader in the space, and he's very, very highly credentialed and regarded. And he sat on the board of the scientific advisory boards of some big pharma companies. So they know who he is, and they know that when he's involved in a company like ours, that they want to keep a clear watching brief and find out what's going on.
No, I think that's a great way to answer that and to wrap this up. So just kind of summary here is, you know, for my listeners, this is a high leverage play on the next wave of immunotherapy, and you have a really interesting TriKE platform that is one of the top names in the pharmaceutical space for 2026. And what's the best way for investors to stay updated with your progress?
So they can go on the website and they can actually register to receive all of our updates and press releases. They can obviously check in on the website on a regular basis. We are very good at making sure that our website is updated. So if they're on our mailing list, they will get all of the updates and press releases as they're released. So that's probably the best one. But quite often we on our website will put up updates with regard to videos and stuff like that, where I'm talking about some of the current things that we're doing and things that we've achieved. So again, that's another excellent way to stay updated.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And that's it for us. If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe so you don't miss our next CEO deep dive. I'm Kevin Steuer. Thanks for watching.